Yo, 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 what is up, everybody? Popo here bringing guys a new video, and today we're going to be updating our tier list. Let's go. Welcome, everybody, and today we're going to be updating our tier list right before Baltimore. We had a huge Victory Road tournament this past weekend that had like a world's top cut. It was kind of crazy. If you watched Wolf, he streamed the whole thing as well. Well, his run into it, which made day 2. But yeah, it was a great tournament. There was a lot of really cool teams, and it kind of didn't really shake up the meta too much. But we're going to go over some of these Pokemon. Instead of like the last time, I actually just put them all into this tier, all the relevant Pokemon. And then here, all the irrelevant Pokemon. Not saying these Pokemon aren't useful and can't be used. They're just not as good as some of the other Pokemon right now. But feel free to still use these Pokemon. Don't let this discourage you if you have a cool tech or you think, well, the Pokemon fits a certain niche or whatever it may be. I also did add Ursaluna Blood Moon now. So we do have Ursaluna Blood Moon in this here. But there are a couple of pretty decent Pokemon in this tier that just like only fit on like one specific team and aren't very good. So, you know, do what you will with that information, but there we go. That is the D tier, so we're not going to worry too much about those. We're not really going to talk about them. I've kind of mixed these up a little bit, so there's a little bit of a randomness to it, though some might still be stuck together, but a lot of it has changed too since my last tier list. So let's just get right into this, right? All right, we got regular Weezing. I think regular Weezing is pretty mess still. It hasn't really done anything. We've seen Galarian Weezing be way more successful at the moment, and I think it's just better because it has that fairy typing, and fairy's hard to come by at the moment. Next, we have Farigiraf. Farigiraf is very good. It can play a couple of roles, including just a role where you're just stopping those priority moves from like Dragonite or the Fake Outs or the Sucker Punches. It can really play in that role, and then it can also play as a Trick Room attacker, which is really cool. I've even seen things like Expanding Force on it, which is very different, and you can use like 3 or 4 different items on it too, and it can be super successful. So it has a wide range of things it can do. So it's a pretty good Pokemon and used on a pretty decent amount of teams. Next, we have Hisuian Decidueye. I think this is still a B tier Pokemon. I don't think it's quite A tier, though it is very good. And it's good against a lot of the best Pokemon in the game right now. But you need a very specific team in order to use this Pokemon, and it's competing for a spot with something like Annihilate. And you never want to be competing for a spot with something like Annihilate. Next, we have probably the best fairy Pokemon. Primarina is definitely top of A tier. This Pokemon is very good. Water type is very good right now, and so is Fairy. This Pokemon puts a lot of pressure on like Archludon, even though you might not think it does. It can use items like Citrus Berry, Rocky Helmet, and of course Throat Spray is probably the most common. We've seen Parrish picking up a little bit. It gets Haze, so it's good against a Dozo. It just kind of does a lot of things and can do a lot of things. So sort of like Farigiraf here. But I think it's just the best fairy type at the moment, and yeah, I know Leaf is happy about that because that's one of Leaf's Pokemon. It's not very good, right? Slowking's not super good, so he just stays down here. Gothitelle, yeah. Gardevoir is also C tier. I have seen people use it. It's people using with like telepathy and boom burst and stuff like that, so it can be used for things like that, but I just think it's kind of weak. It just doesn't really output anything. You can put Trick Room on it, you can imprison with it, so there's a little bit, but it's just so frail. Cerulege has been picking up usage. I'm going to say it's a B tier Pokemon. I think it is actually pretty good, and a lot of the meta right now is Steel types, and coincidentally he's a Fire type, so that's pretty good. It's pretty good. So, yeah, I think a B tier Pokemon for sure. It heals back up with its own moves. You can use Bulk Up. You know, you can just go Assault Vest, I've seen. You can go for a bunch of things. And it can't be hit by fighting or fire types, which is really cool. So it has really good immunities. You can go Grass Terra to get rid of its ground weakness, which is a huge one. And yeah, and it won't be able to be put to sleep if you do that too. So it can kind of do a lot. You put a life orb on this thing, it just does a lot of damage too. Next we have Hisuian Lilligant. This is an A tier Pokemon. I think I had it in B tier on my last tier list, but I've been using Lilycole, and it's just so strong. It's so good. I know it's never really been bad, but it's just so good. It feels really good to play. Close combat is very good right now. You can force a Terra out of Archludon, which then gets pressured by the Torkoal, so therefore you can really have really good synergy with this. Sleep Powder is very strong as well when it hits. And yeah, so it just does a lot, and it's much better than regular Lilligant, because then you can have the physical and you can have a special attacker rather than having two special attackers. And its typing is just a little bit better because it's also has that fighting type. Rhyperior is not very good, so I'm gonna say C tier. You could do some bulldoze stuff with it, or whatever, weakness policy, but it just can't keep up, especially with, like I said, the steel types that are out there. It's not super specially defensive, bulky, so it kind of takes a lot from Make It Rain. Venusaur, I think Venusaur is probably a higher C tier. Some people are using because they like Venusaur, but overall, I think it's just worse than Lilligant, though Sludge Bomb does have some advantages to it, and it's okay into like Primarina, but against the main Metamons, it's not very good, and you can run Earth Power, but it just doesn't do enough to like Goldango and stuff to really make it super worth, though it can hit Goldango, whereas Lilligant can't do anything against Goldango. So yeah, Metagross is pretty bad. He can Bullet Punch, he can Zen Headbutt. He's good against the Moongus, I guess. With the Solvest, he's pretty bulky, but he's not really doing anything. Man, Scrafty. In my last one, I put Scrafty because I think he's super underrated. I'm going to keep him in C tier, though. Probably here. I still think he's very good. I think if he had U-turn, more people would look at him and be like, let me try this Pokemon, because this Pokemon is very good. But since he is missing out on that, it does make it a little rough. Doxbun is okay. It pairs, the Pokemon it pairs really well with are good against the meta, but it itself doesn't really affect the meta, so you get kind of a weird type Pokemon there. Like Body Press is very good right now, but at the same time, like the Fairy typing is not. So you're often going to have to Terrasilize this Pokemon away from those dangerous situations. But if you can get this thing with like 2 or 3, like buffs, it's over. Especially against all physical attacker teams or anything, it's just over. Dugong, I think Dugong could see some play. The reason why it's not in like the bottom tier is because it has seen play in the past, and it's a pretty good parish setter. So, but it's just worse than Primarina. But if you want to be spicy or get like ice type attacks with it, then that might be more of the way to go. But Primarina is just strictly better. We have Indeedee Male. I think Indeedee Male could be a B tier. I think with something like that, Expanding Force and enabling your other Expanding Force user, so you can just double Expanding Force on the first turn, can just beat certain teams. It's just really strong against certain teams. But I think this is like bottom of B tier, so we'll keep pushing this thing back. It's like top of C tier, bottom of B tier kind of thing. Because it does have some usefulness, and it does have some stuff that's trash. Also with Choice Scarf, you can do After You. And you could do something like that, like something that Lilligant can do, right? With Torkoal, where you're now able to have the Psychic terrain up, so you can't be faked out, but also you can go After You with Eruption. So there's some really cool interactions with that. Next we have Rotom Fire. Rotom Fire is pretty bad. He's probably better than these guys, though. He does a lot of damage, but he's just super frail. All of them are super frail. But they're really good into like Goldango and stuff, so that gives a bit of an advantage. Next we have Breloom. I say Breloom's right here. Like, Breloom's okay. He's always been okay. It's just his speed tier is just so weird. It's such in an in-between position, and he's so frail that you might as well just use a Moongus anyways. That way you know what you're getting out of your speed. You have a bulkier Pokemon, and it's essentially doing the same thing without having one of those same weaknesses. So Arcanine, I think Arcanine could be B tier. I think this Pokemon is really underexplored at the moment, and I think people will continue to explore with it and learn that it is actually really, really good. It's good against the steel types that are running around right now, as it puts a lot of pressure on them. Maybe something like a Water Terror would help with that too. And yeah, it just does so much damage. And it has Rocky Helmet, so it's not taking any recoil. That's really cool too. You can use it with Choice Band. Yeah, I think this Pokemon is very underexplored, and I think it could be a B tier, and we could see a breakout. Volcarona. I think Volcarona is an A tier. Volcarona has been performing very, very well in these best of 3 tournaments. So going into Baltimore, this is a Pokemon I would expect to see on stream, especially on that team that's including the Gengar and the Clefable. That team is very, very strong, and this Pokemon is one of the key pieces on that team, as it is able to set up using that that Quiver Dance, and then you can get Unaware on it and just kind of start destroying things. It's really, really good Pokemon, and definitely don't underrate this. Conkeldurr, he's probably around here. He's probably worse than this, though I've seen a couple of people using it, and it's just not good. It's just not good. This is pretty bad too. Though you could still do some stuff like Baton Pass with Minimize, so you can't really just discredit this Pokemon as like it's nothing, because it still can do something. And if you don't have any preparations for a Pokemon like that, like Muck and stuff, because this plays a similar role to Muck does, you can just be absolutely swept by it. Bronzong, I think Bronzong's high C tier. I think there's a potential for Bronzong to be into that B tier, but I think it's just being overshadowed by the other Steel-type Pokemon, and it doesn't really do anything against Goldango, which is one of the biggest problems, because Goldango has the Shadow Ball to hit it, but it doesn't have anything to hit back, Gyro Ball being its probably best move, but it's just not good. Regular Ursaluna. Regular Ursaluna is also an A tier. This Pokemon also has been performing very well in the Victory Road tournament the other day. Performed very, very well. Top Cuts is putting on a lot of pressure. Immunity to Spore is pretty big too, so it's just really doing a lot right now. It's not really living up to the hype as when it first dropped, because if you guys remember when this Pokemon was first announced and people were looking at the stats, they were like, this Pokemon's going to dominate, and it never really has. I don't think it's won any big events, any regionals or anything like that, but I could be wrong. But maybe we could see it win Baltimore, because if positioned properly, this Pokemon is absolutely dominating everything, and it's really good into the 3 Steel-type Pokemon that are the most relevant right now. So, Dusclops, I still think Dusclops is really good. It's probably better than Bronzong, honestly. I think people are sleeping on Dusclops just because there's other Trick Room setters that they're looking at. It's hard to really compete with Farigiraf, so a lot of people are just looking past it and looking at Farigiraf because it does the same thing, right? It can't be faked out. But you also get Will-O-Wisp, you get Pain Splits, you get Nightshade. It also gets Sunny Day. If you haven't been on my streams recently, we are using a Fast Coal team, and we also have Dusclops as our Trick Room setter. Because he can Trick Room and then set up the Sun before Torkoal goes, so that's a pretty huge advantage for it. Plus, it can't be faked out. We have Dark Terror, can't be taunted. So I have some experience with this Pokemon. I think is very, very good, and I think people aren't really looking at it because there's a lot of damage out there right now, and this Pokemon doesn't really do any of that damage. But it pretty much can't get one shot, so it's got that going for it too. Next, we have Torkoal. I think Torkoal's an A tier. I mean, if you're going to put Lilligant A tier, you got to put Torkoal A tier. This Pokemon's just very, very good, and if you're not running Rain, it's a big, big threat. Actually, the team that I'm talking about, that Fast Coal team, it's actually best matchup is Rain. I have built it to be the best matchup is Rain. So, yeah. Torkoal is very, very good, especially next to Lilligant. You can go for so many mind tricks. After you can just go Eruption, Close Combat. There's just so much you can do with this this lead. And with Sleep Powder next to a Torkoal, it's always going to be dangerous, as you're just going to get free attacks off. And anytime that's happening, you're probably just going to win the game. So, Pelipper. We're going to put Pelipper at the top of A tier, I think. Right in front of Primarina. Now, Primarina is probably the best water Pokemon, and Pelipper is probably the best. I happen to be a water Pokemon, so Weather Ball is out there doing a ton of damage. Whether you change the weather or not, it's going to output some damage. And then also it has Hurricane, which is putting a lot of pressure on the grass types that resist its Weather Ball. So it can really put a lot of pressure that way. It also gets Wide Guard. You can go Tailwind. It just does a lot and enables a lot of Pokemon like Archludon and stuff. So really, really good Pokemon right now. Not because its stats are good or it's like doing a lot. It's because it's enabling so much that it's a really good Pokemon. So Yanmega, we talked about this one specific team, but that team died, so he's going down here. Asmurl, I think Asmurl could still be pretty good, but it's probably around here. It's a fairy type, which makes it really good. Huge power obviously is very, very good. It's competing, right? It's competing with these two water types, which, you know, special attacking water type is a little bit better into the meta at the moment than a physical type water type. A physical type water user, I guess. A water type physical user, I think would be the proper way to say that. Just because of the way the meta is shaped, there's a lot of really bulky physical Pokemon like Archludon that Asmurl really can't touch. Whereas Primarina puts a lot of pressure on with that Moonblast, so there's a big differential there. Como, I think Como is a B tier Pokemon. It's probably here. It's just pretty strong, and if you can get it set up, you kind of just win the game, so it has that. Flamigo is probably around here. It's pretty good, but you have to have a team built around using it, and that's where it becomes difficult, because if it's put in a bad situation, it's very, very weak. It's very weak to Intimidate, very weak to Fake Out. It does output a lot of damage into Grass types and Steel types, but other than that, it's just pretty meh. I think it gets like 2-shot by Terra Dark Sucker Punch from King Gambit, so, you know. And you don't want that from your fighting type. Next we have Rotom Frost. This Pokemon's pretty bad, though. You could use it for sure. Double Blizzard strats is pretty relevant. You know, it's not really super, super good into the meta. Once again, all those Steel types, so, yeah. Mousehold is probably here. Mousehold is very, very good. Not only does it get Friend Guard, but Population Bomb is back, and people are using that with Choice Band or even just with the Wide Lens, and then like Helping Hand, or I've even seen one Tidy Up. So, you know, people out there running it. But yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad, but usually you're going to click Follow You or beat up onto your Annihilate, and so it's enabling. Grimmsnarl is probably B tier. It's probably a B tier, only because it can set up those screens, which make sure that your Archludon is taking less damage, and that could be significant in the battles. Other than that, it's pretty meh. I guess maybe it's just here. It just happens to be the one that they use on the team, right? Porygon's probably, well, I know it's better than overall. I guess it's better. Just because it outputs a lot more damage than Dusclops. It's getting used a little bit more. There's like Porygon 2 and Ursaluna team that's going around that people are really liking, so we can expect to see some of that at Baltimore too. Gyarados, I thought Gyarados would be a lot better than it is. It's probably down here, honestly. It just, once again, it's competing for the same slot that two other Pokemon are doing just better, so... Melodic, same thing, right? Melodic's probably even further down. It's competing for that same slot, and it just isn't winning that competition because, you know, the fairy typing is just so good. Ninetales isn't that great. It's enabling the Snow, but Snow's not that great right now, so I'm not really liking it. Whimsicott is pretty good. I would say probably B tier. I don't think it's quite A tier. It's probably the best Tailwind setter. I like Murkrow a little bit better personally, but the fairy typing gives it a little bit of an edge, and it's possible that it is A tier. I don't feel like it's an A tier Pokemon. Basiligian. Basiligian is very, very good. We're also going to go A tier. This is probably top of A tier or B tier. Because a lot of people are running this. Once again, another water type that's competing, but I think Primarina is just better, so I can't put them in the same tier because it just doesn't feel right. Last Respects is very, very good, especially endgame with Choice Band, but yeah. Garchomp has been very disappointing to me, but it's probably still here. I don't think it's quite B tier. We could see a breakout from this Pokemon, but it seems like those Talonflame Garchomp teams are really losing their oomph, and it might be because Archludon is just so strong into both of those Pokemon that it makes it really hard to use either of them. Like Earthquake does pretty good damage, but then you're getting a defense boost, and if you have a way to heal Archludon, then now Garchomp is just a sitting duck, and you have to terrestrialize to get away from the Dragon Pulse, so it's just not really good. Tinkaton's okay. I thought it would be better than it is. It can fake out some things that can't be faked out normally, like, you know, like Dragonite, and it can pressure Dragonite. It can hit, you know, things are super effective. It can taunt away Goldango if it's going for Nasty Plot. So it can do some really cool things. It just doesn't do damage. It just feels so weak every time you use it. Zoroark, I think Zoroark's still a B tier Pokemon. I just don't think people know how to use it yet. I think we might see a breakout of this Pokemon in the future, and it'll be very, very strong. It's very hard to use. Very, very hard to use. Next we have Gallade. I think Gallade's pretty good too. It's probably better than that. This is probably better than this, honestly. It can go for Trick Room, Wide Guard. It crits all the time. It does a ton of damage. It puts a lot of pressure on the Steel-type Pokemon, including Goldango. So it can just do a lot. It has a lot of coverage moves that go along with its sharpness ability. So very, very, very good. Next, Empoleon. I think Empoleon's pretty meh. He's probably down here. Once again, he's competing for the same thing. You know, Pelipper is going to be the choice, or Primarina is going to be the choice. You're not really going to pick Empoleon, though it can still do some certain things, especially if something like Intimidate starts to take off even more than it is. He could be better. Amoonguss. Now, Amoonguss early format was probably here, honestly. Like bottom of B tier, but all of a sudden he's exploded, and I think he's up here. I think he's just slightly worse than Pelipper, only because of the fact that Pelipper can one-shot it and also enables so many other Pokemon. But against those steel types, Amoonguss is doing very well, especially with that Water Terra. It can put most of them to sleep, not Goldango. And yeah, heal up your own Pokemon. So it's got a lot going on. It can also clear Smog, get rid of Dondozo's boosts. So it's doing a lot of cool things. Water Tauros. Water Tauros is probably up here. This is the only good physical water attacker thus far. It's really good, once again, on that same team with Volcarona. You got the Gengar, you get the Clefable. It's really, really good on that team. You got the Mirror Herb, so you can get the boost off the Defiance. You're getting 2 boosts where they're only getting 1 boost. So it can do some really, really cool things, and it also gets a priority Aqua Jet, which is really nice, especially if your opponent sets up the rain, then you put some pressure on, and it also does a lot into the Archludon, as it is a fighting type. Next, we have Mamoswine. I think Mamoswine is still pretty good. It's just nobody's using him, and I'm not really sure why, because he's the best ice type in my opinion. But I don't know. He's just probably too frail, I guess. Oricorio Ghost. I still think this Pokemon's pretty good, only because I got destroyed by it. So I got to give it respect. I have to. I got absolutely annihilated. I did beat it the second time around, but I got absolutely destroyed. And I wasn't ready for it. Klefki's pretty bad, though it can set up some things, but it's not really doing anything Grimmsnarl can't do, except for resist steel, or not resist steel, but neutral with steel, but even then, like, Terra, Steel, Make It Rain is still just like one-shotting this Pokemon. Typhlosion. Typhlosion actually has moved up in my opinion. I think it's probably here. Maybe it's a little bit less here. This Pokemon has been a menace, especially in the Victory Road tournament. Not only because Wolf used it, but there was other people using this Pokemon very successfully. And it just showed how strong it can be if piloted correctly. And a lot of people use it as, oh, I'll just play this and just click Eruption and it's a good time. But I think it's more than that. So in the right hands, I think this Pokemon could win a regional. Next, we have Samurott, the dark version. I think it's pretty decent. I'll probably put it here. I just don't think enough people are using it or have picked it up or even looking at it because we have, you know, Gallade. He's kind of Gallade at home with a different typing. He does resist Goldango. He's like very, very good into Goldango, like one of the best answers to Goldango. But other than that, he's He's pretty meh. He's pretty meh. Still gets the same moves. Sacred Sword's not stab, so you're losing out on that a little bit. Aqua Cutter's pretty good, though, to help make up for that. But into the meta, it's not super, super good. Night Slash is also stab, which means it's going to most likely one-shot Goldangos because of the way that they're running nowadays. Speaking of Goldango, here he is. S tier. He's probably the best Pokemon in the format right now. He had the most top cuts at the Victory Road tournament, and he's just... does so much damage. Sinistcha's probably bottom of B tier. This Pokemon been seeing a lot more play as Archludon sees play, because the Archludon teams are kind of transforming. They're going from like kind of a super offensive team to more of a like offensive team that has defensive components. And with this, you have the Rage Powder as well as the healing, and it just really can position you well. Yeah, this is terrible. Tyranitar, I think, is an A tier Pokemon. As you can see, we have the trifecta of the terrain setters. I think it's very, very good. I've seen a lot of people using it recently. There are a lot of fighting types, so you often do have to terrestrialize this Pokemon, but if positioned really well, it can just take over games. We've been seeing Dragon Dance sets, been seeing weakness policy sets, with, Terra Flying and just, you like Volt Switch yourself or whatever it might be, and then you're in a good position. So this Pokemon is very, very strong, and yeah, it destroys Goldango. Unless Goldango hits it first, then Goldango destroys it. So, Politoed. I still really like Politoed, though they're not using him as much. He also gets Perish Song, so he plays a similar role, but he doesn't have that fairy type that the Primarina has, so he misses out on that, like we've talked about before. I still think this is an S tier Pokemon, though it hasn't been performing super, super well. I think there's a chance that Hydreigon does start taking over that position, but the problem is that Primarina going around, it's pretty common, as well as fighting types, so it's losing a little viability that way. Its speed tier is a little strange, and what do you do with it? Do you go max speed, or do you more invest in its bulk so it can survive at least one hit? But with Snarl, it's pretty good. It one-shots Goldangos, which is really, really good. It also one-shots like a Moongus if you go Draco Meteor, which is very, very good. So you can put a lot of pressure on a lot of these top Mons, but also gets destroyed by a couple of specific Mons that makes it really hard to use. Sylveon, I thought Sylveon would be the best fairy type, but it hasn't really been that good. I'm still going to put it in B tier, though, because I think it has potential. It just hasn't lived up to that potential, and we'll see. Regular Lilligant is probably really bad. I would not use regular Lilligant over even Venusaur. Like, Venusaur is just so much better. Where did Venus... Oh, here he is. It's like they disappear. Indeedee, and I'm happy to say this, I think Indeedee's A tier. If you know anything about me, I've used Indeedee probably more than any other Pokemon I've ever used in my whole entire life. Like, Indeedee has been with me. The same Indeedee, by the way, has been with me since like the beginning of Sword and Shield. It was on my second place team for Wolfglick's GS Cup. It has, seen Players Cups. It has seen everything. So I'm a huge fan of Indeedee, and usually Indeedee is like here, it's made for specific teams or whatever, but this Pokemon is now being splashed, and I'm really happy with Indeedee. Next we have Vermilion, or what is that his name? Why does that sound wrong? I think it's pretty bad. Sorry, I thought somebody's knocking on my door, so that's why I stopped for a second. It's pretty bad, though. It's not really doing anything, and you might as well just run Lilligant to do the Sleep Powder stuff, but Friend Guard is pretty good, so Sleep Powder Friend Guard is alright, but I just haven't seen one, but I think it can be used. Araquanid, I think, is pretty meh. I had this in my D tier, but I've seen some people using it, and people are praising it. I just don't think it's good. I've never been a big fan of using this Pokemon, despite the fact that I'm a huge fan of insect Pokemon. I've just never performed well with this Pokemon, so... Sneasler. Sneasler is an A tier Pokemon. He's probably the second best fighting type Pokemon out there. That poison type also gives him an advantage against those fairy type Pokemon that is missing from the other fighting type Pokemon. He is really bad against Amoonguss, however, unless you're running, like Terra Flying, which I have seen. Gets rid of your weakness to ground and now makes you have a super effective, Terra Blast or whatever. On Burden is so strong because you just go so fast. You can use this with DD. You can use it with Rillaboom. Makes it good that way. You can also use Fake Out with it, which is pretty good. So it's just a really strong Pokemon. Has performing pretty well, and I think it's definitely an A-tier Pokemon. A Pokemon we could see win Baltimore. Oranguru, I think Oranguru is a B-tier Pokemon, and I won't have anybody tell me different. This Pokemon is very good, and I think it's another one of those ones that's just super overlooked and underrated. It's very good. This is terrible. Once again, it's competing for the same positions as these water types. Ludicolo will put in kind of the same tier where it's kind of meh. I've seen a couple of people using it, but it just doesn't really impress. King Gambit, however, is probably the second best Pokemon in the format. Often you're not going to run both of these on the same team, though you could. You could. But yeah, you're not going to probably run both of these on the same team, but it's very strong. Dark typing is really good right now, as well as the fact that it is steel type, so it can hit fairies for pretty decent damage. With Terra Dark, it's doing massive amounts of damage, gets a boost off Intimidate or any other status drops. So if you have a really fast team and they want to go for Icy Winds or something, you switch this in, or if they're going for Snarls, you switch this thing in. Now it's doing massive amounts of damage. You switch it into a Parting Shot, and it's pretty much a GG for your opponent. So, yeah. Next, we have Porygon Z. I thought this Pokemon would be better, but it's just not that good. It's honestly not that good. It just, I haven't even seen it, so I can't even talk about it. Smeargle. I think Smeargle still has a chance of being B tier. I've seen a couple of people using it successfully in a lot of the tours, but it hasn't really had that breakout success that I thought it would. But you could do some really cool things, and one of those things is Transform. I think that we might start seeing a little bit more. Fake Out, second turn Transform after you boosted up your other Pokemon could be a huge thing. And then now you have two Pokemon that are kind of putting the same exact pressure on, but they could do two different moves, right? Like, let's say you have Volcarona. One can go for Heat Wave, one can go for Giga Drain, so that way if they go for the Water Terra, then they're still pressured, right? Yeah, so you could do some really cool techs with this Pokemon, and once again, you can put Spore on it. So you get a Spore off, Fake Out, Spore, then you transform. You get two boosts off of your Volcarona or something like that. You could do some really cool things. Dragonite is definitely an A-tier Pokemon. It's probably here. It's just so good, and it does so much damage. It's ridiculous how much damage this does. The only reason why it's not S tier is only because Goldango exists. If Goldango didn't exist, this Pokemon would probably be S tier, because even against the other steel type Pokemon, it's still pretty decent because Outreach still does a ton of damage. But you can't hit Goldango with the extreme speed, so it just makes it tough, because if you can just get into a position where it uses extreme speed, you just lose. Riolu, I still think Riolu could be good. I'll put it around here. Coaching is still good. Skeledirge, I thought Skeledirge would be a little bit better. I'm going to put it up here, though. I think Rain just really inhibited this Pokemon, and that's why it hasn't seen much. Clefable is definitely an A-tier Pokemon. I'm going to put it up here. This Pokemon has been being splashed. Now that core is kind of being splashed on other teams, not just that one specific team. So we're starting to see a lot more of Clefable. Unaware is very good. Skill swapping Unaware onto one of your Pokemon is very good, and then taking away from Dondozo. So there's a lot of really cool things you could do with this thing. It also gets Moonblast, which puts a lot of pressure on a lot of Pokemon. Though it is bad into Goldango overall, it's still a very good Pokemon, and really showing that it is something to be afraid of. Palmot's probably a B tier Pokemon. This has been being used in quite a few teams, including Dondozo matchups, where it's reviving Dondozo so you can get a second boost off, which is really cool, especially if you can use it to get rid of those haze users, because a lot of them he can do a lot of damage to, like that Primarina, right? He could put a lot of pressure and damage into Primarina, making for a little bit of a better matchup with that haze. Next we have Annihilate, and Annihilate is going to be probably here. You have to have something to stop Mouseape. If you don't have anything to stop Mouseape on your team, you just lose. Some of the other top tier Pokemon, you can kind of work around them and just kind of not, I don't want to say ignore them, of course, but just kind of have something that's like a generalized counter. But you need Follow Me. Like, if you don't have Follow Me, Rage Powder is even hard to use because they often have goggles on, but you have to have something. You have to. If you don't, you just lose the matchup, and that's not a good time. Annihilate is B tier. Listen, hear me out. I think Annihilate is very, very good. I just don't think it's doing enough right now. There's 2 very good Defiant Pokemon, as well as a ton of fighting Pokemon and water Pokemon out there, as well as Archludon. It just is not in a good position right now, and its Intimidate doesn't feel as strong as it has in the past. And that's crazy. That is crazy. And now you have like this Tauros that's intimidating, and then Mirror Herbing, so you're just getting a better version. And if you wanted to use the Fire Tauros, which is just worse than the Water one right now, you could. And you don't have the Fake Out, but you're getting +2 attack. You know what I mean? When you intimidate, Annihilate or the King Gambit. So sorry, I keep getting distracted because there's a lot of banging. Sableye, I'm gonna keep him. I was gonna put him down, but I'll keep him here. I think he could still do some stuff. He's just not super great right now. Rillaboom. Rillaboom is the most used Pokemon right now, I believe. Or it's very much up there. It's like back and forth between that and like Goldango. So it has to be in the S tier. Fake Out Grassy Terrain is very good. It does a lot of damage with the Wood Hammer, so you can't discount this Pokemon. It's very, very good. It always has been good. I'm going to put this in B tier. Armarouge is pretty good, and you could do a couple of things with it, but if somebody has something stop size spam, this Pokemon can be pretty bad. But I have seen supporting versions of this with like Will-O-Wisp and stuff. So maybe we can start seeing some more of that and less of the degenerate stuff. Excuse me. Salamence. I think Salamence is probably high C tier. It's in the same spot as Garchomp, kind of. They share 4 times weakness. Draco Meteor does a lot. Shiftry's pretty bad. I haven't seen anybody use it. Regular Guja's pretty bad. Pikachu's probably the worst one here. So Comfey has been starting to get more usage, but I don't think it's that good. So I'm going to put it around here, but it has starting to see an increase in usage with Trick Room and Tailwind. I've seen both of those on one Pokemon with Drain Kiss and Floral Healing. So you can get the Floral Healing off on your Archludon. You can get the Tailwind off if you need to, or you can Trick Room so that way your Archludon is winning those speeds too if they have a really fast team on the other side. So it's kind of like a Pokemon that's kind of doing everything on one body, and it's a fairy type with a priority move. So it makes sense. It's pretty good against Annihilate as well. Drain Kiss does okay damage. Dondozo. I think Dondozo's dropped off a little bit, but I still think it's probably A tier. It's just really good, right? I mean, you have to be able to counter Dondozo. Get completely swept by Dondozo. So this has very much dropped off, so I'm just going to throw it down there. The Muck team also has dropped off, but you have to have something for it or be prepared to face it. Talonflame has dropped off a little bit, but I'm going to put him at probably here because he's also a good Tailwind setter, though if you hit him with a Fake Out and then you have a Pokemon that's faster, you can just knock this out. It's also really bad against extreme speed because it could just get one shot. So Corviknight, I think Corviknight's still pretty good. I just don't think people are using it. It's probably here. I don't know why people aren't using it, but it is very good. Murkrow. I'm going to put Murkrow here. I think it's worse overall, like I said before, but I like it better. So you take that as you will. I think Mimikyu is still really, really good. I just don't think anybody's using it. I think people need to start investing in the time to use it. Glamora, I think Glamora is pretty good. I'm going to put it at the bottom of B tier. Being able to put up poison spikes is very, very good. And just be able to use Meteor Beam can take out certain Pokemon. But it just doesn't do anything to these two, right? So you get that going for it. Garganacl, I think Garganacl's pretty good, but it really hasn't seen too much usage because it's super passive. This is pretty bad, so I'm just going to put it there. Okay, Blood Moon Ursaluna. Its results would say that it's an A tier, but I think it has to be respected so much that it's an S tier. I just think it destroys the top 3 Pokemon, right? It destroys the top 3 Pokemon. It does okay against Rillaboom, so you have to respect it. This has been terrible, but I'm going to put it like here. Gardevoir is probably a little bit higher. I mean, not Gardevoir. See, I did the opposite. Gothitelle. I did the opposite. Only because Parrish is coming back a little bit. I think it could be decent. This hasn't been very good, though. I think it can be. I don't know why it hasn't been very good. I guess it just can't hit Goldango, so it just kind of feels bad. This has been pretty bad, but it can't be rated too low because you can use it with Tyranitar stuff, and since Tyranitar is pretty good. Raichu's been pretty bad. I haven't seen... Oh, actually, I did see a single one, and it didn't do anything. Now, here's a Pokemon that I had put in the D tier, but people are actually using this over Armarouge now. So I'm just going to put it right slightly ahead of Armarouge. I like Armarouge better, but Expanding Force on this thing does a massive amount of damage too, and it's a very unique Pokemon. Its defense is a little bit worse, I think. So, Meowscarada. I'm going to put Meowscarada at the bottom of B tier too. Probably ahead of these. It's been pretty good. Flower Trick is very good, and people forgot that it was good, and now people are remembering. It also has Knockoff, which is also very, very good. I'm going to put him with the other Dragon Boys, though I think he's probably just slightly worse than Garchomp. He's just not doing anything. I don't know. Okay. Listen, I'm the first to admit when I'm wrong. Palafit's pretty terrible. I faced one, and it felt so bad. But there's a chance it could do well in the future. Torterra can still do the same thing. Slacking is just, whatever he's doing. Magmar has been very bad. The Fire Tauros, he's probably up here. He's not awful, but he's also just worse than the water one. Dragapult, though. Dragapult's probably an A tier, if not top of B tier. I'll put him top of B tier. I think he's really, really good. He outputs a lot of damage, but there's a lot of Pokemon that can counter him, like Indeedee just kind of counters him. Clefable's very good against him. So there are a lot of Pokemon that can wall this thing pretty easily, but if you don't have those Pokemon, then he is kind of taking it over. This has been pretty bad. I'll just put him here. Next, we have Archludon. Archludon is here. The only reason why it's not a little bit higher is because you need a specific team to use it, really. If you try to use it outside of the rain team, it just feels kind of doo-doo. I've seen a lot of people recently not using Assault Vest on it. Don't do that. Don't do that. But he's very, very good. Body Press, Electro Shot, he's just doing everything. This has been pretty bad. Arcanine, just don't use this. I don't know why he's even in here. Don't use this. This has been getting some usage, and I think it's pretty good. It can't be faked out. It puts pressure on Goldango, so you could do some really, really cool things with it. But once again, if they're just running rain, it's going to be really tough. This has been pretty decent, like I said, so I'm going to put up there. This has been terrible, though I thought it would be pretty good. Malamar, I've lost to a Malamar, but it's also not very good. This is down here. Electabuzz, I think Electabuzz is probably around here. It's been a very good support. I just don't think it's B tier. But it's a really good follow me user, and it can't be put to sleep. This is probably up here too. I'd probably put it actually ahead of these. It's not quite B tier, but it's a very good fairy type, and it can also use Expanding Force. This has been pretty bad. Abomasnow is just going to go down here. Rotom Wash. Oops. Rotom Wash I'm just going to put with the Rotom Heats. Tatsugiri. I guess Tatsugiri probably be B tier. It's not very good. Dozo's better than it, but Espathra has been pretty terrible. Just throw it in there. This has been pretty terrible. Though I don't think it's completely useless. I think Snorlax is actually good. I just don't think anybody's using it, so it's kind of lost out on that. It does get high horsepower, so he must be a horse. I have to respect the Charizard because I got absolutely destroyed by a Charizard. So I'll put him there. Clefairy, I think Clefairy is actually B tier. It's probably around here. It's really, really good. I mean, Friend Guard, plus Follow Me is always good. Gengar is really, really good, so it's probably here. It goes with that Clefable team, and it's just doing so much. It gets Haze, it's Shadow Ball, Sludge Bomb. It's just doing a lot. It pressures into Goldango, as well as, you know, grass types like Rillaboom. Can't be faked out, which is really, really nice. It resists some good typing, so just a really, really good Pokemon. Toxicroak, there was a good Toxicroak team going around that Cybertron showed. This is just terrible. And this is not bad, but it just... people are just using Farigiraf. So there it is. There is the updated tier list, everybody. We have... who joined this tier? Oh, King Gambit joined this tier, because this is what it looked like before. But King Gambit has been the second most, you know, top cut Pokemon in the last couple of tournaments. So it has to be up there, and you have to respect it. It's so good against the Goldango that it's really hard not to put it in there. I personally like the Salt Vest version. But yeah, this is what it's looking like for me going into Baltimore. I would not be surprised if Rain plus Goldango won the whole thing, or Rain plus King Gambit won the whole thing. We're going to see a variation of that. I wouldn't even be surprised if Trick Room, like hard Trick Room, ends up winning it. Or even a Mungus, like on those same Rain teams with that Goldango, a Mungus, Pelipper, like, and just put 2 other Pokemon on there and just call it a day, right? I think we could definitely see something like that. But yeah, that is it for me today, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did, make sure you guys thumbs it up. If you're not subscribed, make sure you do so. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye, everybody.